Welcome back to another episode of Testing and Tech here on Vital MX. This is a podcast, so if you're listening to us on audio form, welcome. If you're watching this on YouTube, yes, we also record this, and if you didn't know that about the other, then now you know. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you rather listen to it, check out Vital MX in your favorite podcast platforms. There's, of course, a lot of other great podcasts that we do. We have a great MXGP show with Adam Wheeler and Lewis Phillips. If you're into learning about MXGP and the ongoings there, myself and Lewis also do a really good post-race show for the Supercross series, plus a bunch of pre-race and post-race interviews. Yes, when I say myself, I'm your host, Michael Lindsay. I'm the content director here at Vital MX, and across from me is Stephen Tokarski, our product editor at large.
How's it going, Michael?
Oh, pretty decent. We had a quick morning at a dirt bike track, and now we're here to sit here and talk about dirt bikes.
We had great conditions today at Kauai. That was...
I was jealous. We had to come back and do this podcast, or I would have rode. I haven't rode Kahia in months because during the summer it is tough. But
I couldn't believe how good it was for end of August.
So jealous. But yeah, it's actually kind of the time of year. Testing's starting to ramp up. We have a bunch of new bikes. Yourself and I are going to Fox Raceway next Monday for the 2026 Yamaha 450 intro, which, speaking of which, this podcast is brought to you by Yamaha Motor USA. We'll hear a little bit more from later in the show, but they are the title sponsor of this podcast and support it, along with a lot of other great stuff on our site, and they have a lot of really cool product updates this year. Again, I mean, there's new 450s coming out in the sense of the Ducati, but they are the most updated 450 of a currently existing bike.
They're the only updated one of the current 450s.
Triumph has a small update from the one that me and you are riding right now, the RC one. There's a small update coming to their production one, but yeah, the only one with something more than a small suspension update or something. But yeah, it's that time of year, and it always, more in past years, it hasn't been as big of a deal, but I will say I remember about this time last year, like, knowing the Ducati was coming, having the Triumph, the Beta existing now, and our current field of OEMs with Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas.
Jeez.
Shootouts are a nightmare, and shootouts used to be one of my favorite parts of this job. They are slowly becoming one of my least favorite parts of this job, and we will get into that. I guess the basis place to start. We're usually on the show, we go through 3 to 4 topics. I think today we have 2 really large ones to jump into. One of them is me and you are just going to sit here and talk about shootouts, what they do, what the challenges are, how they're done. You, of course, worked for Yamaha for a long time. So how many roughly have you probably worked on as a testing tech?
So there's maybe 5 or 6
a year
per
450,
450,
per
250. So say 10 per year. So I'd say 80 to 100 shootouts over the last 8 years.
In hearing that, you trounced my number because on one hand, I was like, well, other than about the 2 years I was gone from Vital, heck, I still participate in one of them. I did the first one here, and I've pretty much participated in every one. So between moto and off-road bikes.
That shootout was really awesome that you did when you had your YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I did. I did one on my own.
Bought all your own bikes from the showroom floor.
I can still claim the most views ever had on a shootout, at least from a YouTube number. Yeah, I got to go back and I could look here in a second. I think it's like 850,000 or something I did on that one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that because, as you know, some manufacturers, they don't cheat, but they obviously,
874,000 views, and Jesus Christ, I had long hair in this intro.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about like nipple line. Wow.
Going back to the 70s style.
That was wow. Yeah, that's always been a weird one, but yeah, you trounced mine. I was gonna say I think I've maybe done all in all like 30 or something on my own of my own regard. But yeah, you've been around a bunch of them. So you also seen a little bit how everybody does them. And I will say, I think the earlier days I did them, like everybody was just really stoked on them in general. I kind of pat myself on the back. I think on my behalf, I helped push 2 things. One was getting them done quicker instead of, I know everybody was like really magazine based at that point and wanted to save a shootout for a magazine. Like you would get a teaser video, so you wouldn't get them for months and months at times until most people had already bought the new bike anyways.
Yeah.
So by us doing them in a very heavily video format and still a big article on the site, but doing them quick, we pushed it to like get it done, get it up. And then the second one is we always went very transparent on our result, like it or not. People nobody's ever really happy when a shootout's over. But just, hey, here's a group of riders, here's the results. It's very straightforward. There's no mystery of no collective we at this magazine said this, we at that. Well, no, I said this guy said this guy said that. So
yeah, that was one of my biggest complaints at Yamaha. Reading some of these and watching them is that, and obviously we would spend time with, say, 6 to 8 guys, and then it would seem like it was just one person's opinion at the end of it, and not showing everyone's results, not doing Olympic scoring and all that.
Yeah, so I think, I'm trying to think here if it was 10. So first one for me had to be 2015 maybe, 14 at most. So again, it's been a little while. I think most, like I said, I think there's 2 common ways to shoot out. Before we get to that is, just answer the simple question. I'll answer it, you answer it. Do you think shootouts hold value in a current day market for somebody going to buy a bike?
I think they do a little bit, yeah. I think people that are undecided and kind of on the fence of what they want to do, maybe they like a brand or don't really know or can understand a bike and feeling and don't have the opportunity to ride them all, they do go to read and watch a shootout and kind of get a little better opinion of, all right, I'm going to go down this direction since it seems like this bike's winning shootouts. And I know from a manufacturer standpoint, they really like that because it's a big marketing positive for them if they do well. And yeah, it's just a positive for everyone overall.
To answer, yes, I do feel personally like they hold value, although I will say I definitely question the value sometimes. And part of that is, I think in a nutshell, I explain it sometimes like what I get out of one. So I always tell people like, hey, at the end of the day, the winner is not the end all be all for every bike. And I start every one with that. And that's not, I've had some people immediately go, oh, that's a cop out because you got people not going to be happy with the result. No, it's the honest fact. Like, for example, our shootouts, the Yamaha 450 and 250 particularly have dominated both tremendously over the years, mostly the 250 especially. At the end of the day, like, and I run into it. I've usually, one thing I try to keep consistent is I almost bring the exact same group every year. Like, there's always schedule conflicts. People are sick, people are hurt. So maybe one guy swaps out a year. And a lot of my guys buy their own, actually my group is, I don't know if this is laziness on my part or just flat out not wanting to grease the wheels. Like, almost all the guys I bring, I don't get bikes to. Like, there aren't guys in my regular group that get my loaner bikes to ride for the year. It's all buddies I know that buy motorcycles. So I do laugh, though, is like I have one buddy, Derek, who's a hardcore Honda guy. He always buys a Honda. But one thing I'll give him props about being honesty is he almost never picks the Honda in a shootout.
He's picked the Yamaha a lot.
He's picked the Yamaha a lot. And 250s he's picked, Yamahas and Austrians. And because at the end of the day, whenever I do a shootout, I go for a very simple format of, hey, we get all the bikes together. We do a multi-day, usually 2 to 3 days. And a big rule for mine is everybody has to put a very even amount of time on bikes, but that is also very limited, like in the sense of, hey, you have 15-minute blocks to go through bikes. Because if you let guys free roam, when they're fresh in the morning, track's good, they'll spend too much time on their first bike, and then they get lazier throughout the day and start doing less and less laps. And the end of it, I tell all of them the same thing, like, hey, if you had to buy a bike based on here to ride or race for the whole year, based on what we were able to do today, which is just clicker, sag, no, like, oh, I'm going to throw nothing. I'm not going to throw suspensions, but cancel out the factor of spending money on what would you take? Because that's ultimately what it is. The shootout in ours is an off the showroom floor opinion. And I've been always very proud of a lot of the guys we brought is they give me opinions that don't match their personal bikes. But sometimes they still don't even, to also match that, they don't always go out and buy the bike that they picked higher in a shootout. They're like, hey, I really like these aspects of our bike, and I think I can fix these. And that's why we say people, when they listen to shootouts, like, hey, listen to collective opinions. Just learn about the bikes. Learn about what they do, what their base characteristics are, what's negative or positive. If you think you can fix the negatives and you like the positives, then cool, go get that motorcycle. We are not in the every shootout out there, no matter how much somebody wants to say they're putting more time or less time on them. None of them, I think, we're not in a realm where any of them are really built in the way that you're doing endurance testing with. And that's one of the biggest comments I get from people is, well, we'll go put 100 hours on each bike. Okay, I'll report back to you in 1 year when all the bikes are already done.
Even longer than that.
So that's always been a little bit of an unrealistic fashion. When you look at all the shootouts I've done, what kind of is your 1,000-foot ceiling view of how they're done or like what they're accomplishing?
I think it's difficult to find a perfect solution for it and a format that everyone's going to appreciate and enjoy. But it's just, it's tough because there's some guys that no matter what you do, they like a brand and they're going to pick that bike no matter what because they're comfortable on it and it's easy for them to ride that bike because they're riding it more often than the other bikes. And I think it's just it's difficult. It's a very difficult format overall.
And why I say difficult, and I joked at the beginning, it's slowly becoming the bane of my existence, is let's take the 450 shootout this year. We did it the very classic way of we're just going to run every bike and run a very even amount of time and try to formulate something without taking weeks and weeks and weeks. 10 motorcycles is really hard to ride an even amount a day because part of why I said we keep our format really tight is at the end of the day, a dirt bike test is tough because the track conditions change so much. And I never want everybody to go off of, hey, I had a morning bike and an afternoon bike. We keep it really tight so everybody re-rotates the bike. So that's a big one by keeping it so short is, hey, you're not only riding, say, the Honda 450 first thing in the morning where everything feels amazing and then you never touch again because Hondas, let's take some past Hondas, very playful bikes, very powerful bikes, but maybe not the easiest to set up a couple generations ago. If I let the guys go off just the morning feeling, they'll be like, people complain about this. This is the best freaking bike ever. Then they ride it again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're like, help.
Yeah. I always push people to come back to the Yamaha if they started on it early because of how good it is in the bumps, suspension and stuff. So a lot of people in the morning, it's good, but not the greatest. And then they come back in the afternoon and they're like, boom, this is the bike for me, you know?
I will say if I did a morning only rotate or like a one wrap rotation, we would have different results because I've had many 100%. Years where I think, especially because I've used the same group a lot of them know what the past, of course, they've been there for the prior results and the Yamaha comes up as one of those, especially in the 450 class. They'll ride it. If it is one of their earlier bikes in the day or they ride other good bikes in the day, they'll come back to me and be like, hey, I'm not saying this is my opinion yet, but I don't know if the Yamaha's going to win. Like KTM is pretty good. The Honda's pretty good. And then we do a late day rotation. They come back and they're like, damn, that bike works good when it's rough or something like that. They, some different characteristics shine in a bike when it's rough versus smooth. I think some of the things, of course, that I've seen the most feedback from people with shootouts is, and I get some people swear the whole like nobody rides a bike stock. Yes, everybody's gonna do some of the bike, but I don't know if it's change at the times or money or the people I see on the weekend. I'm also shocked how many people I run into on a weekend that do ride a bike basically bone stock.
Bone stock.
Maybe bone stock to them is they always just put a pipe on it, but they're still running stock suspension. Yeah. Maybe somebody always does a set of handlebars. The rest of the bike stock. Some guys are bone stock. Some guys are suspension only, but I get the bikes are getting expensive. Cool, I could go do a shootout and throw a $3,000 budget at every bike.
Yeah.
That's also, it's realistic for some consumers. It's not realistic for others. If you were given the keys to the castle to do one right now, what do you think is the most like effective way to get an opinion? Like if you were trying to build one right now, what do you think is the most effective way to start?
I think having a wide variety of riders is good and getting a lot of opinions, different skill sets, different weight, all that. So you don't just have, I've seen a lot of, if you have a lot of faster riders and not many slower guys or lower skilled riders, that people complain about that. But it's also, no matter who you are, it's so difficult to ride even 4 bikes, 5 bikes, and remember what that first bike felt like compared to the 5th bike. So I think I would try to maybe do some type of bracket, but then that's kind of gets a little fishy and difficult to kind of see, because I say you put the Suzuki and the Yamaha, which might be an easy win and draft it. But yeah, I don't know. We've picked around on a lot of ideas of how to do it, but I think the multiple day thing is really good, going to say Glen Helen and like a Paris, so you get a good tight track and then a faster speed track, so you get different situations, different conditions. I don't know. That's a very difficult one to.
And that's another tough one. I wish, okay, especially as the field gets bigger, like the other day we just got Ducati's coming into the space and Bay's in the space, and they all have different levels of support and how they can support a shootout and doing it very evenly. Like this, the most simple one, somebody probably hears me say support. Well, screw an OEM wants to just take all the bikes. The only time I have been giving 100% freedom for a shootout and not had to deal with any political BS, not had to deal with any scheduling mishaps, not having any issues of one OEM only having so many bikes for shootout, and hey, you can only test with us for 2 days, is the year I got all the bikes privately.
Yeah.
Which is an absolute nightmare in its own shape or form. It was the most beautiful from the fact that nobody could tell us how many times we could ride a bike or not ride a bike, or how many days we could continue to do a shootout or any of that. Because right now, if I were to say, hey, perfect plan with us having 10 bikes this year in 450, like if I wanted to do it the older school route, hey, we're going to have 6 or 7 guys, multiple tracks, like, yeah, it would take more time. I'd say, man, we're going to have to spend 5 or 6 days doing this. I cannot get every bike from every OEM for that many riding days. And especially, I'm saying somebody might go, 5 or 6 days. Well, people need a break. People need to re-prep. Some of the guys I'm talking about have a day job. So I'm like, it would take over 2 weeks. I know one particular OEM that I'll just say, I mean, Ducati sent out their request for us the other day, and man, they don't want any of us to have the bikes very long, which I get. They're more of a street brand. They're not used to it. And I think Dirt is also a spoiled group of media guys. No offense to all of us, but I think a lot of them are used to 20 years ago where everybody got handed 1 or 2s of everything for a year and didn't have to account for it.
And I think it's difficult because all these bikes are coming out at different times. So, and especially in previous years when KTM would come out with their bike in May, and then say the Yamaha in 23 came out in September, they have this bike for 6 months already before. And then, so that's why at Yamaha, we like to try to have a control bike, we would call it, a bike that we brought out that we knew was perfectly prepped. We like to put around 10 hours on a bike just so the frame's broken in. We know everything's kind of feeling a little not tight, but just well oiled, ready to go. And I think it's just, I think it'd be interesting to have one where you don't even do clickers or anything for someone. You just say, okay, each manufacturer, bring a bike out. You give us what your setting is. You think maybe it's not showroom floor setting, which that's another thing I might want to try to do is just completely showroom clickers and not let anyone touch it. Maybe just set sag and see what is the best bike with no adjustments, how it is, how you roll it off the showroom floor. And I think that would be, but again, that's a give or take.
Perfect world, how I've been able to do it some years is collect all the bikes ahead of time. Every OEM has had enough time to release them to me early. I've taken them and dynoed them all personally, which is a good opportunity to catch if I think somebody's fudging in some shape or form, because a lot of times I would dyno at Race Tech style because Andrew down there has run so many bikes through his. It's not perfect because it is, his new one's a little better, but the prior one was in a trailer outdoor, so like time of day could affect it. So we had to do everything like really early in the morning before it got too hot.
Temperature.
But they had so many others in their system that I could see if we had something that was drastically like, why is this bike 2 or 3 horsepower off? Which has actually worked out in one OEM's favor. I had a KX450 one year that was drastically low for some reason. Like it was like 4 horsepower off. And I told them like, and they swapped me. And then the next one we ran was more in line with the other bikes they dynoed. Dry and wet fuel, or dry and wet weight them. I would do dry weights, dump everything out, put all my own gas in all of them and wet weight them. And then we would do a day with no OEMs, just all base clicker. The only thing we would do is move sag a little bit for photo shoot day. And spend a day collecting our assets so nobody had to stop to do a video clip or a photo clip for somebody on a test day. And then we would do 2 days of testing, 2 different tracks, tight format where you had to ride each bike twice a day. And just rotate everybody. And then again, I always had the base rule for everybody of like, your winner is pick whichever one you end the day on, you feel the most comfortable at the end of this test, and you had to take it home and ride it for a year like that. Only thing you could do is put clutches, replacement clutches and tires on it all year. Like you can't spend money on the dirt bike. And the theory was I was always trying to give somebody a base opinion of, hey, here's what you can expect if you go buy this motorcycle. Yeah, you can do anything in the world you want to it further than that. The whole, hey, what if you did the suspension on? What if you did the engine on? What if you did ECUs on? You can do that. Here's what all the bikes feel like. This is the best informed opinion you can give us. And I've seen also people go, oh, why don't you spend more time with bikes? I think me and you tend to agree on this, and it stems from testing. I think your first opinion, your initial opinion, is the most truthful opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't mind the short turnaround on each bike, because for me personally, as much time as I've spent doing it, I can tell you 95% of what's going on with a motorcycle in 1 to 2 laps. So I don't need all day.
2
If
laps.
anything, my brain starts to train itself around issues.
Yeah, you start riding and adjusting to those complaints or positives and not really just focusing on how it's affecting yourself.
I want the most raw opinion, even to the point, if we're doing 450 shootout, I won't ride a 450 for a month. I almost every year have been able to do it where I will ride the opposite class, like the opposite displacement bike all before a shootout. I will ride a 250 or a 350 or something else completely random before a 450 shootout, at least for a couple weeks. And then vice versa, before 250 shootout, I will never ride a 250. I want to, like, I've ridden them all, so I have an opinion.
Yeah, you want to clear your mind of any opinion you have.
Yeah. And any bike we bring never has more than 10 hours on it. Same thing, if OEMs give me bikes, I always cap them at 10, so one isn't just completely hagged out compared to another.
That was difficult. Sometimes the media outlet would want to use their own bikes, and we'd show up for the manufacturer day where we're out there and the tires are worn out, and the oils, they haven't changed the oil, so it's just not being a completely fair comparison for everyone.
From what you've seen, like, and this may have changed over your time at Yamaha, and tell me how much it has or hasn't, do most of the media outlets perform a similar shootout in terms of how they do it or how it's procedured?
Yes and no. Because there's obviously, I won't name names or anything, but there is some media outlets that, they have you come out and there's 8 guys that test the bike, but then when it comes down to it, they don't show you anyone's scores besides just the overall who picks it, and that might be the head guy at the company or whoever's running it, and you can kind of tell why that bike wins because it's that person's favorite and not really the overall consensus from everyone. And then it's just some other ones you can see just from their comments about the bike, especially engine character, they're going directly off their dyno numbers and not really how it feels on track, and just letting everyone have a really transparent opinion of the bike. But then there's also some that will show you each bike, each person's score, each rider's score, but the tough part about that is just one person can really change an order of how they score. Like, there could be a bike that does really well, but then it gets 1/5 place, and that's what cost it a win. And that guy picked 5th place because, I just don't like appreciate that bike, or I'm comfortable on the Suzuki and I've been riding it and I'm just a Suzuki guy, or something like that. Which, I don't know how to really make it perfect, but I think there could be some changes, and definitely being more transparent, letting each guy's opinion be well known makes it a little easier for people to appreciate it.
Let's start now. Let's see if we can each nail down 3 things that we think in a perfect world we could do in a shootout that would improve things. I'll start. We'll each go one at a time. One, and I've done this before, and it sounds complainy, it's just down to needing, like, I do think at the end of the day, like, no matter how I do a shootout, there's got to be an opinion portion of it, like a feedback. However, like I said, the terrible part with motos, it's so inconsistent from a data standpoint, and people always bring up data. One piece of data I did one year that I found extremely interesting, I think this was 2018 or 19. I was able to do it through the 250 because I actually brought somebody out just to do data all day and run lit pros and make sure they were done. Dirt bike riders are stupid. Nobody can remember to turn them on or off themselves. Something that came up during it was fastest lap time versus best average lap time. And I ran into this with the 250. The Honda 250, it was 18 or 19, back on that dual pipe bike. The bike had really good top end. The chassis was really good on that bike, but it had horrendous recovery character.
Yep.
You made a mistake on it. It was extremely noticeable.
Yeah,
we were at GH in the afternoon. I want to say the vast majority of my guys ran their best lap time on a Honda 250 or a KTM 250 but the difference between their best and worst lap time on that bike in a 3 to 5 lap average was over 2 seconds difference because of recovery character. The Yamaha 250, which ended up winning that shootout, did not have the best lap time for a single one of my test riders, but it had the best average by far. A best to worst lap on it was like 3 to 4 tenths. Recovery character, suspension action, everything about it wasn't necessarily the bike that anybody could go fast on. It was around third fastest for most guys, but it was by far the most consistent bike, where the Honda had huge peaks but valleys for guys depending on mistakes. And you could see in the data where they'd blow a corner before a hill or something, and the bike would just be a dog in that section.
Yeah, see, I could argue with that, though. Is like, it's so tough with lap times because you ride 6 different bikes. Maybe you're tired when you're riding one. The track condition changes. For me, I think a really different and important part of it would be renting a track, so you don't have a bunch of public guys blowing out all your lines. Leaving it, maybe do another day where it's public, the track's smooth, but do a day, because like when we test for prototypes, we rent a track out. Say we're at Glen Helen on a Wednesday, so we leave the track how it is from Tuesday. So the track's rough, all the lines are built in. It's hard you don't change the track at all, so you're hitting the same bump, the same rut. I think having a track like that would make it more consistent. More controlled. Where, it's going to be the same at 9 a.m. in the morning to 2 p.m. Just a little bit of water can make it a little different, but I think that would be another benefit to making this more consistent for people to understand which bike's best.
So I guess I never finished touching yours is consistency, control of surface and situation. I think mine falls into collective data that can be utilized to prove more of a point with bike again, showing characteristics of bikes.
Because some riders, not to ignore, some riders may feel fast on one bike, but the lap times show something different. You know, which is.
I've ran into that. I've ran into where somebody swears they're the best on one bike and ran lap time.
And they're 3 seconds slower,
Yeah. Second one I would run into is, this one has always been the toughest, is every year more and more I want to use less people. And the reason I say that is, like you said, one person can affect something. Yeah. And it is very hard to find. Like, the perfect world is, me and Kiefer have joked about this endlessly. The perfect shootout it's not the perfect shootout, sorry. The best shootout I think media could perform, if somehow we could all get together, we've joked and called it the super shootout, is the ones of us that have the most experience, have been paid to basically, that have the ability to go do it day in and day out without an issue, is, hey, myself, Chris, Pat Foster, Stapo, kind of the main guy from each one, do it together, because we could ultimately do, if we want to, we could do a week straight, and it's all within our jobs. It's not a problem. So many of our guys that bring in either health, you would not believe how many guys have had get hurt either the day up before shootout or somehow in between shootout days. Yeah, or they're sick and weed himself on a mountain bike. I had a dude get sick. I had to do no show, and all that affects things. Because honestly, the biggest difference we've ever had in shootout, like I said, I've tried so hard to keep the same group together, because the year was one of the years I was not at Vital. They fully gutted and did an all new group based on the staffers that time.
I remember that.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't gonna name names, but it was the most unsavory response. The first thing I got told when I came back is, "Do not let that group ever do it again." It wasn't because of the result. It was because of the way it was performed.
Yeah, that was the least amount of riding I've ever seen at a shootout out of a group. But they broed down more than they rode.
The other problem with doing all weekend.
Peace and love, though.
Peace and love. But once again, is the whole, if you got the group, any consistency year after year goes out the window. It's not for right or wrong reason. Not to say one group's better. It's just, hey, consistency of voice is valuable when you're trying to year over year track some form of result, some form of being able to say, hey, this. If you're just only focused on that year's result, that's one thing. But year over year, to be like, did this improve or did it go backwards? Did this change? Did the bike with the minor changes outperform the bike with the bigger changes compared to last year's shootout? Being able to kind of work through that, you need extremely consistent groups. So the more I do this, I'm like, I would just want to use the same. And this is tough because this goes in the face of having a lot of different opinions.
Yep.
But I think of like growing up reading a Car and Driver or Road and Track magazine. It was like, okay, they would do some big car tests. They would only have like 3 major editors from the group. It is tougher because I feel like, you know, if we're talking about a car test, it does come across a lot different than dirt bikes with different heights and weights, like how it affects how the motorcycle works. But the smaller group being able to keep the data more consistent and being able to eliminate as many variables as possible. And I think that's the ultimate answer for me with everything she does. How do you eliminate as many variables as possible?
Yeah, I've always joked it'd be nice if you could just erase people's memories going into the day so they have no previous opinion.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have some, you know, this bike does this well. You know, the Yamaha has a great engine, so everyone's going to be like, oh, it's already. They'll come back, and I've had a lot of people come back and just say stuff that you know is overheard, and you hear a lot in the industry. So it's tough. Like if you could just come into a day as a baby who's never ridden and understand, and just give your opinion from that day.
Do you know how much I've also had to yell at the group? Not that my guys are ever bad about this, but how much when I see them get off a bike and they go like start wandering towards each other.
Yeah.
Everybody back to the bikes. Don't talk.
Yep.
Don't predisposition, or I'll jump off. I'll be walking by one of my guys and like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Go right it. I'm not talking. I don't talk to anybody.
Like in testing, say TP would come in and say someone else would go out, do balk or whatever, and I was waiting to ride that next setting, I would always walk away and not listen to what he was saying, because it's just gonna give you give you that thing, and then you're thinking about that when you're riding, so then it's kind of already in your head, and then, oh yeah, sure, that's what it feels like, instead of just going directly off your feeling on track.
Yeah, there's so many factors. Like I said, I get into the whole wanting to use 2 or 3 guys that have done it, because one other factor I've run into, and I know I've had a lot of people reach out because they'll be like, hey, and I get this is one of those characteristics, I think, of the whole joke about whether we're talking about California or Florida or Georgia, like your really heavy motocross states. I'll have somebody in my group that's a vet novice, but then somebody watches the video and they're like, oh, your guys are fast. Well, the video sometimes only shows the guys that are better in the group riding, so that's part of the video proposal. And yes, some guys that we consider a vet novice here may not be a vet novice elsewhere or something.
True.
But it is tough also to find guys that can survive a day of it, especially when you add more motorcycles. That's why it's really tough to just grab a bunch of random, as you experience when it's just a bunch of guys that ride everywhere once in a while. It shouldn't, in theory, it shouldn't be that hard, but in some of the years that I've tried to put the most effort into it, I remember one year myself and Zach Petty got into a war. It wasn't meant to be a war, but we got to the end of the day. It was one of the years we used the Lawlet Pro. We knew how many laps we'd each done. I think we were at Kia, and we were coming up on like 80 or 90 laps each for the day, and I kept going, like I was end of the day, and I basically went back to every single bike with my best setting for 2 laps at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was joking because I would go do 2 laps on a bike and then beat Zach by a lap, and then Zach would jump back on something and do 2 or 3 laps and up one lap. That is not, even though it's in spurts, it's not that. It's different. I'm not saying you have to be. There's been years I've gone through shootouts where I'm not in shape. Yeah. But there's a certain characteristic to doing it where you know how to manage your day and manage yourself through it, because something else that can make you absolutely useless through shootouts is just burning yourself out. And I've had like racer kids do it that can lay down 30s Impala that somehow cannot survive a shootout day because they don't know how to manage themselves throughout the day and how to put the correct amount of effort in each time they ride and not blow themselves on one bike.
I think a lot of it is there's a lot of mental with it too. You know, you're not just going out and doing moto and then come back in and bullshit with your buddies. You got to talk to the manufacturer. They're picking your head, picking your brain on what this is, and you have to start thinking more. So actually going back to like a format style, I think a really good way of doing it would be, say we have a guy for each bike, and then you set them up to, okay, you're going to this bike, switching each bike, and doing a quick 2 laps on each bike in the morning, and then in the afternoon do the same thing where you have, say, a 20-minute window where you do get to ride all the bikes. Because I find that with some guys that they'll enjoy a bike more than the other, and this guy will be out there for 30 minutes on a bike, and then I see him go over to the other manufacturer and do 2 laps, and he's done.
Yeah, so that's why I would always do that list in the morning. I would always give it to you guys as I have all the guys, what bike they're supposed to ride every single order of the day, in what order they're supposed to go through the bikes, and I would reverse the orders day to day.
And doing it by weight.
And do it by weight from lightest to heaviest, or heaviest to lightest.
Because some people would just, it's a free for all, and they'll have a 140-pound guy come and then a 210 guy and then back to the floor. And there's a guy waiting. So the guy comes in, the shock as hot as can be. And then I got twisted 5 turns and I'm burning my hand. And it's just, it gets a little chaotic that way.
Yeah. Now, another thing I'll say that gets interesting with shootouts is the expertise also behind the people working for the OEMs. And I've said this before, other than the hats off to how well Yamaha does it, a big part I'll give that is I believe, at least on the U.S. side, I believe that Travis Preston and yourself put in some of the absolute most effort of any OEM to have an option for every idea, like have an answer for every idea. There is a good amount of OEMs that don't have as much dedicated off-road staff. So some of the guys there some of the techs personally do not have experience with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
They have one person there who maybe has experience on the bike, but one of them is just a tech. They know, maybe they're experienced techs and they know a lot about bikes and been around a lot, but that specific model, that specific conditions, they sometimes don't have an answer. When I come in and go, man, it's really bad at X and Y, and I've tried Z, A, B, D, F, G, what else do we have left? Because I always try to be honest before I get off a bike. Like, if I feel like I've run through everything, I still get off and I'll instantly tell the OEM, they'll be like, how we do? I'm like, this is as good as I feel like I can get it for now, but that still is terrible. Yeah. Or that's still an issue in my mind, or that is an unsolvable problem at the moment. Like,
yeah, I think that is a great, how Yamaha does do it is me and Travis have probably spent more time on these bikes than anyone there is. And then no hate comms, but yeah, there is some manufacturers that just have a tech out there that he might not even ride, he just spins wrenches, and having him not manipulate, but influence someone's opinion is a little more difficult. And yeah, he could tell you some feedback, but he doesn't know what direction to go with that. And I think that's a big thing why Yamaha, obviously the bike is great as it is, and us helping doesn't make it better or worse, but I think it does give the rider a little more confidence knowing like, hey, these guys developed this bike. They know X, Y, Z, A, B, C of what it's going to do and what direction to take you in with that.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to throw out 2 completely different scenarios here, and I'd love to hear people's comments on what they think they see more value in when I name this off. And I'm going to ask you what you think of these 2 shootout ideas sounds the most valuable. So in my head, especially as we get into a large pool of bikes, I have 2 very different ideas of what I think is of value. One shootout is, yes, it's multi-day, minimum of 3 different tracks. It is a wide group of riders, either enough per bike, maybe a little bit more, a little less. So some say it's somewhere between 8 and 15. It's every kind of skill range, a girl included, like everything you can think of. It is non-OEM supported. It is just if the levers need to be moved a little bit or the sag needs to be moved even a little bit, just get raw opinion, very short laps, because most your weekend warriors cannot do it. Hey, I just want base opinions, try to get everybody to do that. Like I said, 2 laps in the morning, 3 laps in the morning, 3 laps in the afternoon, and just do it all off either off opinion or a score sheet, and get a very wide range of opinions, but very little intervening on the bike. The bike is basically, like you said, showroom floor quality with almost no tweaks.
Yep.
Go very wide opinion and just get from the pro to the average to everything in between. That's all you get is opinion and a score sheet. Option 2, take 3 people that are very experienced. Say it's me, yourself, Luke, or one or two other guys in our group I know can do this day in and day out. And we go dedicate 3 to 4 days to it. We try we log our time. I still want to be very fair on how much time gets put per bike, but we log kind of I would say a morning and an afternoon time. By the end of the shootout, everything has to have a very even amount of time between all of us, like how much we spend on each bike across 3 or 4 tracks. We do everything from riding very base to running through all of our setting options, and then run a very data-driven day of like, let's do starts, and then let's do fast laps, and let's do averages. And it's a very small group. Sadly, most of us would be near expert level or above in your case. But you get the most like analytically driven type of result possible. Like we would still have an opinion, but then we would break it down with multiple pieces of like data or answers of like, here's what we thought with all of them straight off the showroom floor. Here's what happens when we intervened. What was a good morning bike? What was a good afternoon bike? What's off starts? What was a good consistent bike? What's a great 1-lap pace bike?
I think putting them together. So
Kill me. Give me the gun now.
Doing option B for 3. I'll guess
There was one under this table.
So yeah, have 3 guys, say 3 to 4 guys who really understand and have ridden a lot. Say there's a weight difference of 170 to 200 or whatever. Put the sag in the middle. So there's a middle guy who that's for him. Maybe the heavier guy is a little 110 or 100 for some guys that are a lot lighter. And then not running through any settings, because then you're kind of like, okay, what's the best bike that if I adjust it, it's the best, But just completely no settings, just how this thing is rolled off the showroom floor, how all the R&D teams say, all right, this is the bike. We're done. This is our setting. This is what we're giving to the public, and see who comes out the best that way.
Yeah.
I think is an interesting way of maybe doing
Okay,
it.
that's what you mean. When you said both, I thought you meant every idea throughout there were together. I was like, please.
Just a little bit of
the gun, just
a little bit of
life,
option A and a
existence.
little bit of option B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, love to hear opinions. There's comment sections. There's emails. There's the forum. Please throw them at me, people. Speaking of which, because I said we were going to do 2 topics today. We're not. We're 45 minutes into Shootout, and I still have Shootout to talk about. But before we get any farther, I got to talk about our sponsor, Yamaha Motor USA, the presenter that allows us to do testing and tech. And as I say every time, I felt like they were the best partner for this, because when I think of tech in motocross, Yamaha comes up between the reverse cylinder idea on the 450, which later bled into the 250, the tuner app, and just a lot of stuff they've been forward thinking on, having also one of the widest product ranges. They have an abandoned 2-strokes, they have 4-strokes, they have off-road, they have dual sport, they have everything. Ultimately, we really think Yamaha's support of this podcast. And again, we're all really excited to ride the 2026 YZ450.
Yes.
Updated frame, going for a little bit better comfort, matching in with some really good handling characteristics, and I am still very excited to ride that motorcycle.
It's going to be a good day.
I wish right now I could ask it. The man sitting across from me has spent already time on it, but we have an embargo. If I were to ask him questions about it, we would get shot. The embargo is
you don't have a gun, so you can't shoot me. I could say whatever I want.
September 22nd. September, it's still a little ways out. We ride it on Monday, but I got to double check. I think it was the morning of September 22nd is when all the U.S. info.
Well,
I think there's already Aussie info out there, which was
they already did their
beat us to
intro.
the punch.
There's always a fight between Europe,
the countries, and
US,
when the bikes get there,
and
all that
but
stuff.
I will say some of the major complaints of this bike last year are the major improvements that they have made for this year, and I think it's going to be a tough bike to beat.
Yeah. From your position in the OEM side and your coworkers, I'm very curious. How often do you guys, and I get it, like, again, I'm not ever saying, okay, I have my personal opinion. There are times when I read a shootout result where I'm like, how the hell did X person get to this result?
Yeah.
That happens. At the end of the day, I always say, as long as it's a very truthful opinion, I will never complain. However, for somebody that, especially who's very tied into it and your staff was tied in and the guys around you, how often would you guys look at shootout results at the end of something and be like, WTF?
I'd like to plead the fifth, but there has been numerous times, yes, where I might have been like, there has to be some type of paycheck or something going on to why this bike won.
Yeah.
But hey, that's their opinion. If that's what they want to put out there, that's on them. But yes, there is sometimes where you're scratching your head of how the hell did they get here? How did this bike finish here?
Other one's logistics. I know me and Chris have joked about this forever. The East Coast Shootout. I know Chris is finally going to try a version of it.
Yeah, we've been hearing that for many years, so we'll see if it actually comes true.
Well, what I ran into is the same thing Chris ran into.
I love Chris. Peace and love. But.
Peace and love. No hate comms, as he would say. I think the only perfect solution there is back to you somehow to have to privately acquire the bikes, because I got very close to doing it one year and a few too many people threw a fit about it.
Well, I know he does have some bikes back there already.
Yeah.
So it might be
He got some shipped. I think he's acquiring one or two privately. I don't know if he'll have I'm not gonna say I know it. I don't know if he'll have the whole every single bike. Like I don't know if he'd bother with a Suzuki or something like that, but he is doing some version of it.
Yeah.
That's the other one is like, yeah, I am personally curious because, okay, great example. And part of this, I'm a little confused if this is pre-production to full production issue or if this really is a condition issue. And I'm going to throw a bike under the bus that me and you have been messing with lately is the Triumph 450. I really was quite excited when I rode the bike in Georgia. And at times, like, I get annoyed because we do first impressions at a different track. And I usually say that, yes, the different condition can affect the comment a little bit, but I usually, like, I remember when the Suzuki 450 came out in 18, we went to JJR, and a lot of guys had positive say. I had a lot of negative about the chassis update and how rigid it was.
Is that because you crashed in the mud?
I did crash in the mud the first lap. I was not the only person that crashed that day. Whoever Chris sent broke the handlebars clean off his strip clamps that day. I can't remember the guy's name right now. He cartwheeled one, and then somebody else crashed one. I remember coming out of that being a little bit on the negative side. And about the BFR, and they were there was some comments made to me about, well, you've never ridden here, is that why? And then we got back west, and it was still very prevalent. Exact opposite. I had a very, very positive experience with the Triumph 450 in Georgia on their property, and I'm not saying I don't have an overall positive experience, but there's one characteristic of the bike that stood out once we got to California. We just shot today. We had Enzo go through and gut it because that was one of the more unsatisfactory production fork experiences I've had in a while. Me and you both rode it. We tried a little bit of everything. We could get it better in some area, worse in others, but I never really got... Look, I know some people think out-of-the-box suspension isn't good on bikes. Some people think it's pretty close. For me, most bikes, I find, like, I can find something like, yeah, if I had to ride this all year, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
That's one of the first bikes in a while where I'm like, if I was a customer that bought this and I wasn't getting the suspension for some reason, I don't know if I could live with this all year. I was very unsatisfied with the fork character, the comfort. It was not there.
Yeah, that was knowing that KYB did this and knowing some of the people involved that might have been involved with Yamaha stuff as well. I was very underwhelmed with what was the final product. And I know maybe that's another thing of why Yamaha does so well, and is if we're not satisfied by the end of a test, we might spend a couple more days without the Japanese fine tuning and getting sure that, okay, this is what we approve. And yes, there is some times where some weird stuff happens, and you get from a pre-production or a prototype to your pre-production or production bike, and they do feel a little different, but yeah, I just had me scratching my head of how that was the final product and how they approved that to go forward.
I will say in that one, like I said, there's a part of me that has condition scratching my head because I really questioned my own opinion. I'm like, okay, how much of this was the dirt difference? Am I really caught up to? Because of where the harsh point was in the stroke, I'm like, okay, better dirt in Georgia.
Yeah.
Does it help suck it down? Does it get past the harsh point I'm feeling in the mid-stroke? Like, is that part of what's playing into it? But then what made me feel a little better is talking to one or two guys that are in their test team that also then rode the final product here in SoCal. And they're like, we don't know how it feels like this. Like, it was kind of a question mark of maybe the pre-pro fork ended up being, it didn't.
Yeah, and I think they didn't do much or if any testing out here during the time. So I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. Obviously, Yamaha does a lot of their stuff out here. But we also had a similar thing with the all-new 23YZ where we brought everyone to the goat farm. And everyone was head over heels about the bike. It worked amazing there because conditions, new track, just the aura of being at the goat farm. And then you bring it back here to California. Might throw Kiefer under the bus a little bit, but he was, oh, it's good here. But then you get back onto your tracks and you kind of feel, hey, maybe it's not as good as I expected or had my first impression of it.
Can I say my favorite part of the Star experience was me not casing the living crap out of the one blind double in the corner that was very scary.
There was a couple big jumps, but...
just the one with the long straight run in. Oof.
What was funny is Kiefer wanted to have me tow him over that jump.
I did not want to be towed over it.
I had been riding there. We rode the day before and stuff, and I kind of had scrubbed the jump. I didn't just come up and you bop and pop over it like I should. And he didn't scrub it like I did and overshot it.
Oh, he went
bit.
long.
Yeah.
He was the main detractor when I saw that happen.
He was a little mad at me.
When he did that, I was like, I'm out. I don't want a repeat of this because I had way too much run in. Which is funny because I brought it up to one of the kids. I think I brought it because Kitchen was still there. I brought it up to Levi, and Levi was like, "Yeah, I effed up my wrist on that." Yeah, because it does that in that corner. I was like,
what was crazy
I feel better now.
We went there in 21 for the 22 brochure photo shoot for Yamaha, and this is right when they bought the goat farm from Ricky.
Yeah.
None of the star guys had even been riding there yet.
Yeah.
And those doubles that you guys rode were nothing compared to some of the booters that Ricky had. He had a couple like triple step ups that were like, I was nervous to hit at first. And Dustin Nelson actually weeded himself off one. He like washed the front off the lip, and I don't know how he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a couple pictures from there. I look back at it, I'm like, dude, that thing is huge. And they mellowed it out, obviously, but that's crazy to think that they mellowed it out for the star guys from what it was.
Let me ask you the two most poignant or prominent responses I get to a shootout are the one we kind of already discussed is time. I've had people comment about racing a more just overall time, being able to do durability. And one thing I will say is I think, in my opinion, that's my personal opinion is that's two different things because to do durability correctly, you would be so far past purchase time.
Yeah, there's like a suitability and then durability. So suitability is just finding comfort, setting, and then obviously durability is just hammering the bike for 50 hours to see what can you break.
The second one, and still the most common, I kind of touched on earlier, is I have endlessly people go, why don't you set a $3,000 budget per bike? Why don't you do a modified shootout? I have my personal opinion, which I can easily jump into, but I want to hear yours, just gut reaction. Somebody comes up, especially now that you're on this side of the world with me doing them. Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, I think the other side was the dark side.
You've been enlightened. Welcome to the light side. Now you ride everything all the time.
I love it.
Yeah, well, if somebody comes up to you, gut opinion, a user hits you with that right now, what would your initial gut feeling or response be? Like, what does that make you feel? What do you think that entails and looks like? And what do you think you would really get out of it?
I don't know. Can I answer that way?
Yeah. Hey, it's back to our comment about testing. The most honest answer is always the best answer.
Yeah. I need to think about that one because it's tough because you can do so much to a bike and each bike needs different things to make it better. So it's like, are you doing the exact same thing? Are you doing the exact same suspension settings for each bike? Are you making different suspension settings, ECU settings? And I think it's just, the biggest thing about shootouts is you're trying to help someone who's kind of on the fence of what to buy and not, okay, well, we bought this bike. It's good, but we did X, Y, and Z to it. And now it's really good. Like what is it out of the box, how the manufacturers present it to you and say, this is our bike for the year. This is what we want you to enjoy. So,
So the two initial responses I usually tell people are this. The most fair way to do it is pick the same things for each bike. Are you doing a pipe ECU and suspension, for example? However, amongst those items, you could very easily say, hey, because of the natural fault in a bike or natural positive of a bike, one bike might benefit way more from one part than another bike would. And somebody go, well, yeah, that shows the deficiency or this, that. But I'm like, so is that fair? Why can't I, the bike that's really good there, why can't I fix one of its deficiencies? Then the next answer is, okay, do you do a little bit something different to every bike? And then you come into the fairness of what is that list? The other one is I always most commonly see, oh, well, if you're ragging on the suspension's easy fix, I go to X guy and fix it. As I ran into, there's two main answers there. Who in the group am I setting the suspension up for? If it's two of us doing the shot, it's a little easier, but when there's 8 guys, I'm going to make it better for somebody and worse for somebody else. And that's something where I think a lot, don't get me wrong, there are a couple bikes like, okay, take like the Suzuki 250 that's just straight up oversprung out of the box. Like that's an easy fix. But a lot of bikes, like I say, production settings are they may not be perfect, but they're rarely, in my opinion, bad. There are some cases I did mention just now with the Triumph 450. So in my opinion, most time, if you improve a direction and if you have a very wide skill and a weight and rider set, you're going to make the bike worse for somebody else. So deciding whose call that is kind of tough. The other one is, do you pick one suspension guy to do all the bikes? Well, somebody's a better, like Enzo is really known as a KYB tech.
Yeah.
I think FC has a rounded opinion, but I think they're like really these days known as more like a shower WP tech or this or that. And so then it's, we're using somebody different for everyone. So I think the suspension argument is you're going to make the bike worse for some people and better for others. And I just don't know where to draw the line. That's a mystery to me.
And I think price, so the KTM and actually the Husky is $100 more than the KTM, which I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, the premium bike.
So say is $1,000 more than say a Yamaha. Are we putting $1,000 more into the Yamaha than making it so? Is it 15,000 our cap for each bike? Like there's so many variables to it that it's difficult to kind of. I think fine tune it.
I do think one of the more interesting ones I thought of is if you set somewhere around $1,000 or $1,500. That thinking of that's kind of where a good pipe's gone, a good ECU's gone, a good suspension's gone, or maybe a couple hard parts. I do lean more towards, because I've always had people again say, put a pipe on every bike, put a suspension on every bike, like. I don't know, run shootout. I think no matter what you have to run shootout, give the base opinion. I do slightly fall in the category. It would be really fun to be like, I'm going to throw $1,500 each bike, but at the deficiency agreed upon between two or three of us on staff.
And you can blow that so quickly on a motorcycle, which is crazy.
Yes, you can. Extremely. Sad to say.
Yeah. So
very sad to say. You can blow that extremely quickly. Like a one item. It's tough. One of my more favorite ones though sometimes is the whole like, bike that won shootout, how much does it cost to get the worst bike? I thought in shootout to be competitive. That one's kind of fun to me. But I think no matter what, like I said, there's at the end of the day, there's always ideas and people that tell me they can do this better, that better. I don't disagree. Like there is, I think somebody always has to remember shootouts at the end of the day is a group of opinions. They're not perfect. The best I can do is say like, hey, they're going to be as honest as possible. I think no matter what, it's going to always be hard to be as black and white with dirt bikes as street bike testing, as car testing, because of so many more variable differences. I think where any of us can improve continuously is in procedures and formats continue to be improved, but the challenges of more and more bikes incoming make the format very, very tough.
Yeah, I think just being open-minded. Some people already have an opinion before they ride a bike, and they're not going to stray too far from that after a couple laps of riding. So I think just erasing everyone's memory, having them come into the day.
You have the Men in Black little.
Yeah, and just giving them, let's blindfold everyone, not even tell them what bike they're on. That would be an interesting one.
I've always thought how fun it would be if you somehow could get some form of universal plastic did hit me one time. Like, is there some way we could get black plastic that looks really similar to the bolt on your bike? Just totally.
Like I could tell you.
I could tell you what
I could sit there quietly, and you could have bikes pass by, and I could tell you almost which one is which.
I tripped out. I've tripped out friends with that. I'll hear a bike. I'm like, oh, that's a Honda 250. Like staying with my back turn. They're like, how do you know? I'm like, if you spend as much time as me or you do around it, they're like. Even with an aftermarket pipe down bike, like Yamaha 250 is so distinguishable. Honda 250 is very distinguishable. KTM 250 is very distinguishable. Like, and then the whole Austrian group kind of sounds the same because Cowie 250s are very distinguishable. Cowie 250, sometimes you hear the mechanical engine and the noise over. I love Cowies, but God, the 250s make a lot of mechanical noise. You ever stood next to a pro circuit bike?
Yes.
I swear it sounds like the valve cover's going to fly off the bike at any moment.
They sound good, though, on the track.
Oh, they sound amazing on the track, but idling on the stand, they scare the crap out of me.
But yeah, and then if you sit on the bike, you're going to know just off a seat and handlebars. So it would be fun, though.
One other really fun one I've always thought is the go to Fox Raceway or Glen Helen on a weekend, take every bike, again, come up with a base sag that's somewhere for around 180-pound rider.
Yeah.
Just have a sign-up sheet. Hey, everybody, come ride 1 or 2 laps every bike. You can move the levers and that's it, and see how many people we could get to give an opinion on every bike.
I'm sure we could get a lot, but I don't know how long that bike would last. We might have some crashes.
That's your downside. That one actually super intrigues me. That would be hilarious.
That would be really cool.
Hello, everybody. Come ride with us for the day and just collect as many opinions as possible. That's where it would get erratic, because I would show again. This goes back to something, I think I mentioned this on a prior podcast. it was really cool being at the Ducati Intro in Italy, having a brand that comes from, a different avenue and sense of street product, but comes from a very high level, a brand that has continuously produced some of the best bikes, if not best bikes in their categories. So they're used to producing very high performance products in either in their own class, or they've entered a specific class, mid-size, a high-size street bike, kind of whatever they have there, and been able to build a great product. And asked their engineers, I got to ask them, I'm like, what did you guys think when you came in? Because I'm sure you sampled everything. Once you did that and you went to build one, what did you think compared to, jumping in and building a mid-size super bike, or when you decide to build a naked bike that's between these CC sizes, like competitive areas? And I think I was talking to a group of them, and as a group, kind of they acknowledged it. They said, yeah, we've realized this is one of the hardest tests as a group we've been in, because they said they really do feel like the motocross product market, whether we're talking about the 450 or the 250, whatever, or the cross-country bikes as they've gone into it, they're like, the best to the worst product is so much more competitive than any of the stuff we do in street. They said they feel like it's been way easier to infiltrate a product line in street and make the best bike, or have a very insanely competitive bike, or as they said, be able to make it noticeable, even if it's not the best all around, is make really good performance gains in a certain area. Like their bike stands out because it's so good at this, or it's so good at that. And they got into their bikes and they're like, dang, they're all really good and this is really hard. And that sounds like, I hear people say that, and sometimes I'm like, oh, are we copying out our own jobs, like to discern the differences? Like, sometimes I want to say like, hey, I'd never want to like, I'm irritated Suzuki hasn't done anything in X amount of years. I'm irritated the suspension things and the BFR and there are certain things, but like, at the end of the day, it's not that bad of a bike. Give it to me, I'd still ride it all year. I wouldn't be happy about this or that, but like, still pretty good. And there's people that love them.
Yeah, and you're probably within a few seconds of the best bike. It's not like you're just drastically worse on it.
When I say that in the sense of a shootout or a bike test, like there's some people that are like, yeah, good on you for not just shitting on. Like if I were to say like, hey, it is a really close performance window still. But then some people would be like, oh, are you just not wanting to be subjective, or you can't have an opinion, blah, blah, blah. Well, here I took those guys' opinion. They were like, yeah, man, that's hard. They're way closer than you think.
Yeah, another thing that frustrated me a little bit on the manufacturer side is there's some outlets that a bike can't jump places if it's not changed. So like this year, there's going to be some, luckily, thankfully, we have the Triumph and the Ducati coming in that can mix things up. But if we didn't, most of these shootouts would be the exact same, because there's, besides the Triumph, if that wasn't in it and just the Yamaha was in it, the Yamaha, if it placed first, it's going to stay in first, and all the other bikes are going to stay the same because there is no changes. So I think being a little more open-minded, I don't know if bringing new people in would help that from the year past, but
in closing, because we have already
we could go for hours.
We're already over an hour. In closing, that's one thing I will say, where at the top of the show I said, do shootouts still have value? Yes, but I will say one thing that is becoming increasingly difficult or prevalent to me is the value they hold when also the product doesn't change as much. And I have this conversation with our mountain bike staff. We have vitalmtb.com, and they have enjoyed, in the time I've been in media, like the 10 years, I feel like mountain bikes have just had new products after new products, tire sizes, new suspension systems, continuing changing link systems, different frames, blah, blah, blah. It seems like every 2 years, a bike manufacturer is dropping a radically different bike. And they're starting to, as of recently, I think part of it is the market for them slowing down and not wanting to spend the money on R&D, and they've just gone so hard for so long. I've heard them go, oh, it's really tough, man. There's not a lot of new to talk about. I'm like, come to my side of the world.
Yeah.
You guys are complaining because there's only a few changes to a bike. Man, we sometimes have gone years without anything, and we're starting to also slow down. I feel like what we saw with the Honda or KTM, I feel like sometimes now we're going to hit bikes that aren't, even when it's a new generation, it's like, hey, they really focused on just the frame on this bike, or they just focused on the engine. That makes year after year shootouts kind of, it's harder to produce the value and the work in it when you can almost copy paste 95% of the work. That is where I will struggle and say like, hey, because I've noticed it, the views on everybody's have gone down the past few years. And I think it's because there's less new in the bikes every year. One of them does really well when we actually have more than one new bike to talk about a year. It does affect the views because clearly the audience is interested when there's actually some parity in the class. And when there isn't a lot of parity, they don't hold as much value.
Yeah, I think like KTM, they've been really aggressive with changes over the past 10 years. And I think that's helped them a little bit because I did a little, it's going to come out at some point, an article over since 2011 of taking everyone's media outlets shootout results and having an overall winner for each year and kind of so average score and then just total points. And the KTM since 2016 has been first, second, or third. And I think the being aggressive with changes helps and then doesn't help them with sometimes, you know? So I think it's, we could go on for days with this.
Yeah. Well, as always, thanks for joining us for another episode of Testing and Testing and Tech podcast. Jeez, I think I know what I'm talking about. I've been Michael Lindsay. Thanks, Stevie, for his time, Stephen Tokarski. And as always, if you like these, subscribe, like. If you have any thoughts on a future episode, things you'd like us to discuss, throw them in the comment section below on YouTube. You can email us if you have some, if you're listening to our podcast, or throw them on the forum, whatever you want. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yes, please, let's hear your guys' ideas on how we should do this shootout.
Yes, that's the one I'm the most curious. Yep.
Yes.